Welcome everyone to Kabbalah Explained Simply. I'm your host Gianni. I want to start out with a quote that I just read from the Kabbalist Bala in this book Shemati. It says, in other words, if one extends some luminescence and cannot sustain it permanently because one's vessels are not yet clean to be fit for the light, meaning that one will receive it in vessels of bestowal like the light that come from the giver, then the luminescence must depart from him. So this is really what Kabbalah is all about, that if I don't have the right vessels in which to perceive the upper light, then I can't feel it. And that's how we ended up in this world to begin with, that concealment after concealment concealed the upper light, the spiritual light of the upper worlds, of the Creator who manages our whole reality. It got concealed, and we end up being able to experience only what we feel now. And in order to experience something different, we need to expand our vessels, develop the correct vessels with which we can feel it. We're already in an ocean of light, and light means goodness, right? Light is everything we experience as good, and dark is everything that we experience as bad. Now, this is kind of, I was thinking a good analogy is probably an escape room. I've never been to one, but basically what I understand it to be is they put you in this room and it's a game where you need to escape your way out by solving certain puzzles. And this is really what our whole life is. It's this puzzle of how do we take everything that is in our experience and build from it the key to the upper world. And if in an escape room you need to solve a puzzle and, you push a few keys and then get out, in our analogy, we would actually need to use everything in that escape room. So you would find that everything in that escape room is needed in order to build the key to get you out. And you exit from this escape room into the upper world. So let's say our whole universe, which isn't as big as it feels. It's not bigger than one of these fun little escape rooms that you would go to. But that's our entire universe. It looks big, but really it's not. Once we start processing the things that are around us in the correct way, we see that the whole universe is just this very tiny black bubble that we're inside. And all of it is for us. It's not that there's some distant planets somewhere that are useless to us that we'll probably never reach. Rather, everything is there for me, including all of the animals, plants, planets. It's all part of this escape room. And we just need to organize it correctly. And there's nothing redundant. Again, there's nothing superfluous. It's all there for a purpose. So like this piano, this chair, this bed, the people, they're all there for a purpose. And every single one of them has to fit together in some kind of a puzzle that I'm not sure how to build it yet. And with that, I exit this reality. I, as if, turn the iris or the kaleidoscope within me that includes all my senses and the way that I experience reality. I turn them in the correct way, and the spiritual world is revealed. The first degree of the spiritual world, and then there's more to do. Now, I need to do this not with some escape room with things that are just placed there by the manager who's designed it, but with what has been created for us by the manager of reality. Now, this is all kinds of things that seem to be going on in my life. Nature, the city that I live in, things that happen to me like my marriage, my graduation, things that seem to have happened throughout history. All of this plays a role, a purposeful role, and I need to organize it in me in a correct way so that I'll be able to do what I'm supposed to do with this game. Now, you may have seen the movie The Truman Show. Everyone is kind of in their own Truman Show. And the problem with Truman in this movie, who was played by Jim Carrey, is that he has no reference point, right? He's just inside of this game that he calls his life. His wife's an actress, his kids are actors, the guy at the flower shop is an actor. Everybody's an actor in his life, and everyone but him is kind of in on the game, and he can't imagine that this is what's happening to him until some strange things start happening. Like a light falls from the set that he's on, and he doesn't know he's on a set. But this starts getting him thinking, like how come a light just fell out of a sky? And this is kind of what happens to us too, with our point in the heart, with the spiritual awakening, where there's something that falls into our reality called the point in the heart, and it's truly alien, like this light fixture that falls on Truman, and it falls into our heart. And now this exists in us, and it leads us to all kinds of questions, like Truman gets led to start asking questions and becoming suspicious. He really starts questioning that maybe this reality is not all that it seems. Things are starting to look a little fishy. And it's hard for us to imagine that we could really be in such a game. But that's exactly the case, and the Kabbalists write about this. The creator plays with the whale, meaning all of reality is basically a game designed by the creator, and he's playing with us. And it could seem like kind of a cruel game, but when we come out of it, we'll discover that it was actually for our good. Now, why am I mentioning this? So, first of all, I want to start with a quote from Bala Sulam, who was a great Kabbalist. The one I just read to you was from this same book, Shemati, and here's another one. So, because we're in one kind of reality, and it seems very, very real, and we think spirituality might be something kind of like off to the side of my life, and not something that through my life, which is that escape room, that every single thing in it could come into play, and its only purpose actually is not for what I thought it was for. So all the things in my life, my business, my work, my family, all this stuff is not for the purpose that I thought it was for, but to actually correctly use it to escape this reality. So I wasn't supposed to accomplish something inside of the escape room. It would be, if I was in one of these escape rooms, it would be ridiculous to think that I'm supposed to just live my life in this escape room. It's implicit. We understand that no, that everything there is just for you to get out. Some things may be to distract you from getting out, to kind of confuse you, so that through those confusions, you'll discover how you actually get out. So there are other realities that this one is supposed to lead us to. Now, if it's a not true reality, of course we can't get to it. But if it's a true reality, it's possible to get to it. And that's what Bala Sulam wants to tell us here. He says, by accustoming oneself to something, that thing becomes second nature for that person. Hence, there is nothing that one cannot feel its reality. This means that although one has no sensation of the thing, he still comes to feel it by becoming used to that thing. So there are other dimensions of reality that we don't yet feel, but because we're destined for them, because they exist, we can start to feel them. How? By accustoming ourselves to the ways of that reality. The ways of the spiritual world are opposite to our world in every possible way. And my every instinct gives me the opposite approach to what would be required to feeling the spiritual world. And that is why I only feel this world. Because I always have a Truman kind of attitude to it, that this is real, this is really my life, the things in it are actually important, the things that are distracting me from achieving the real purpose of my life, no, they're really important, and I could be distracted by them, and it's okay to be distracted by them. And I'm not realizing that these are distractions from the goal of my life. And that's why I don't achieve it. So Bala Sulam is telling us here that it's possible. Okay, so the Kabbalists tell us that there are many worlds beyond this tiny one that we exist in. This one is like a mustard seed compared to the rest of the universe. Okay, our entire universe is like a mustard seed compared to the upper spiritual worlds. So we're experiencing less than 1% of the total possible reality, and we think it's everything, and we just stop there, and we don't search any further. And we get really busy with everything we're doing in our lives as if our business and these different things are really, really important. But actually, no, they're just to be used as leverage, as a fulcrum or a launch pad to leap up out of this existence into a higher, realer, sublime form of existence. So how do we do this? So he's telling us that we can become accustomed so that we'll start perceiving the reality that's really around us. Okay. One way that we become accustomed is through the spiritual work that Kabbalists have always done. And there's something called going out in Kabbalah. You can call it a retreat if you want to, but there's something that Kabbalists always did, which was to go on a special trip and to there be alone with the spiritual work, meaning they would go together as Kabbalists, but they would be away from the daily distractions of the escape room that is our lives. And they would intensely focus on the inner work. And in this, they would build sort of a mini model, a microcosm, a device, an internal device that they would construct over the course of this retreat, by which they would have a reference point for all of the work that they would do when they come back. And this is why we're going to have actually such a thing, a retreat. And you can read about this in the Kabbalists, the writings of the Kabbalists, how they would do this. My teacher did it. Rabash would do it. They used to go to this place called Tiberias, to a special place there, and they would have a special gathering with meals and readings, and it was a time of very serious Kabbalistic study. And then they would come back into their life with their business, and then they would have this sort of reference point by which to work toward everything in their daily life. So what you see here is some images from the kind of retreat that I'm talking about that we have coming up, the annual KabU, we call it the 3-day leap retreat. And I think we have actually a 10% discount that we can offer right now. So we'll throw those discount links in the chat. But the most important thing for Kabbalists in these retreats is this reference point. And I keep saying the word reference point, this very boring business word, but it's the most important thing for spiritual work. It's actually what distinguishes a person who can work spiritually from all other people in reality, regardless of what state they're in, once this reference point is established. And what I want to do actually is show you an example of kind of what goes on in these retreats to make this a little bit more tangible. So I'm going to show you the schedule from last year, but it doesn't matter because the current schedule, the new schedule for the retreat that's happening in a month, that one's still in the process, but I can give you some insights into what it's going to be about, what the theme of this year's retreat is going to be. So this year's retreat is going to be around attaining higher levels. So it's going to be about attaining, reaching, opening higher degrees. Because before what we call the barrier, the maksom in Hebrew, there are degrees. After the barrier, there are spiritual degrees. The degrees that we go through before the barrier, there are degrees. We do in complete darkness. After the spiritual barrier, we feel ourselves in first grade, second grade, third grade, Ibur, Yanika, Mochen. There are names for them. We can describe them. Kabbalists who reached them wrote to each other across the centuries with no internet, no contact with one another. You know, they wrote the same things about the same degrees that all of them were attaining and seeing them, just like you could go to London, I could go to London, and we could both write about it and maybe never meet each other or see each other's writings, but future generations could see, oh, okay, they both wrote about the same place. So Kabbalists also did this, and they wrote about the sphirot, the degrees, and they could even write like little travel commentaries on each other's writings, and you can fit it all together and it all makes sense. You can tell that it's about the same place. Before that, though, before the maksom, there are also degrees that we traverse in darkness. And that's why we need a special method in order to go through them, because we don't have evidence yet that I'm taking the test and passing the first grade, taking the test and passing the second grade. And so the retreat is basically designed to give you at least once an example of what it would mean to go through a Kabbalistic process, which Kabbalists go through on a daily basis. But each day of this retreat is designed in order to bring you through that process, basically to build within you this template. It's similar to what my teacher did with his teacher when they would go to a retreat in Tiberias, right? They would support each other in this intensive spiritual work. And by this, you go very, very quickly through many states that by yourself would take a lifetime. Let's be honest, a lifetime to go through. Because inside yourself, you have just the data from within you that is part of the state, all of it part of the state, that is keeping you in the state that you're in. And so you need information from outside of you, from another person, ideally from a group of people, ideally from at least 10. And more, of course, is better. And so in this sort of intensive setting, you can pass yourself through all of the states that would take weeks or months or years or even an entire lifetime. We can spend a whole lifetime actually in one state, meaning in one escape room, right? We can just be in this very first escape room, and this is where everybody in our life really is. They're in an escape room, don't realize it's an escape room. They're just playing the piano, laying in the bed, building a fire. They don't realize that it's full of clues and you were supposed to do something with this. And that there are many more degrees after this. So when you exit this room, there's another room. And after that one, another room, and then another and another, until you come out of all of the rooms and then you're in spiritual degrees. Kabbalists have a method by which it's possible to do this every time. But there isn't enough time in one lifetime to get through all of the escape rooms. Unless you have this method, and unless you have to be honest, I would say you have to at least once a year. Kabbalists did it more than this. I know my teacher did it more than this. But at least once a year, you need something like what I'm talking about here, which is a Kabbalistic retreat, where you go out of your life completely. Sure, on a low voltage, once a week, tuning into a broadcast or something like that, opening a book here and there, even a few times listening to some YouTube or something like that, you can advance somewhat. But we don't know how difficult it really is, what we're talking about. To truly, because we imagine spirituality to be something very small. That's the honest truth. We imagine the creator also to be something small. And so do there's many approaches. Let me just put it that way. There's many approaches to the upper world, to the creator. And what they do is imagine it to be something really, really tiny compared to what it is. We can't even imagine how all-inclusive it could be, that really I discover in my reality a hole, a crack that leads, we part this reality like curtains or something that you unzip it, and boom, you're in a whole new reality. And for this, it's not simple. For this, there's a lot of confusions because the closer you get to this upper world, the more difficult the challenges are. So the escape rooms get harder and harder. But the MO for each one is basically the same. So all of the escape rooms, all of these degrees are the same each time. But for you, it will feel completely new. So let's look at kind of the schedule from last year. So last year, like I said, this year, the theme is reaching higher degrees. And I have some details about that as well. But I think I'm just going to look at last year's because again, no matter which degree you're on, even though this year's retreat is on a higher degree than last year's, it will be much higher, of course, because it always is. The steps are the same. It's just that since the scientific experience scientific experiment involves me. I'm the particle that has to go through the same process. But since it involves me and I feel differently each time, so it feels like an entirely new process. In Kabbalistic terms, I'm an entirely new vessel. I'm a new desire. And it's as different, even though I don't see it like this. I think that every day is like the same. I have my same boring life. But the truth is, on each degree, I'm brand new as a baby born into the world that forgot everything about its previous life and is just really excited again about the world. Each degree is brand new. Now, that child has to go through the same first grade, second grade, third grade. They have to learn the alphabet and then start speaking again. Spiritually, we have to do the same thing. So this is what the day of a Kabbalist would maybe look like externally. And this is what we go through in the retreat. So let's say for the first day, you arrive at a retreat and you do something called entering the 10. What is it? It's basically you get to the retreat, you get a group of 10 people, 10 friends, and these are your spiritual partners. They're people who, just like you, wanted to reach the spiritual goal on their own. They probably were like you. They watched, a YouTube broadcast here, a Tony video there. And some of them have been for 7 years, kind of in that track, kind of that slow track. And they took the plunge. They came to the retreat. And so everybody who's there is very motivated to reach the goal, right? So these are people that you can trust, want to reach the spiritual goal. And that's all you need. You can basically work with such a group as a spiritual group. So that's the first thing. You get this group of 10. Now, why is this so Kabbalistic? Is because a Kabbalist has to do this on every degree, every morning, every time they wake up from sleep. A Kabbalist has to organize their reality because my reality is innately organized around falsehood. It's a lie. It's not the truth. It's the Truman Show. And there are a lot of convincing actors that come into play. My wife comes through the door. Here's your morning muffin, sweetie. And she's got such a smile, and my children are so cute that I am totally fooled that they're actors. I don't remember. And I have to awaken myself. Wait. What is the true reality? Where am I? What is this lie that I'm in? And I have to set to work organizing the true reality. That starts with connecting to a group of 10, which starts out being these physical friends. But later on, once I penetrate deeper into reality, I find that it's actually 10 sphirot that I discover. It's not that the people are the sphirot. It's that my relationship to these others who are on the same spiritual path, specifically to ones that are on the same spiritual path, calibrates me to where I can feel the sphirot. And that's why the entire retreat starts with 10. So it's not like we're just creating some fun retreat and we think it would be fun for you to go together with some people. Let's create like a team building activity. No, this has a spiritual foundation that all Kabbalists studied in groups together, and serious Kabbalists would do this thing called a retreat. I'm calling it a retreat. They called it something else, but it doesn't matter. It's basically going out. There's a Hebrew term that's what they called it. It's going out, and it would be usually going into some kind of wilderness. Not that it needs to be the wilderness, but it really needs to be something that it's separate from my whole life, because I'm distracted right now by my different tabs that I have going, by all kinds of things on my desk. I'm confused, and things that I need to do today, those things confuse me. And in that environment, you cannot create a new iPhone. You can't create a new invention, and you can't create the spiritual apparatus. You can't mold it. You don't have the isolation required to mold it so that then you can come out and be in a chaotic city with your iPhone. It's fine because you molded it, but you had to be in a laboratory to do that. So this is the laboratory in which Kabbalists would go and be in a group of 10, or if they had more, they would have a few tens. And this is what you get at this retreat. And so I should also mention here, it says hybrid with virtual tens. So there's two ways that you can attend the retreat. You can attend the retreat virtually, in which case it's on you to have the isolation, to internally dedicate yourself to it so that you have that same level of isolation that is, you really don't have a choice because you put yourself into this retreat, you put yourself into this environment. If you go physically, where really, you have a little bit of a cell signal. No, there's actually wireless internet there, but you're in the wilderness, right? And you're in an environment of people that you're waking up with every day, and everything is oriented towards spirituality. Your meals, walking through the forest, everything is talking about spirituality, attaining the Creator from morning until night, methods of how we can do it. And so this isolation takes place between the virtual and the physical environment. So there is an interplay between the two. So that's why it says here, hybrid session with virtual tens. Okay, now something else about spiritual work that we're going to see here from this schedule. So the first event here, once you're in your Kabbalistic group of 10, is something called a mind-blown session. Okay, what is a mind-blown session, and why is it important for spiritual work? A mind-blown session here basically means something that is more about the knowledge side of spirituality. So a lot of people, like myself included, came because for me, Kabbalah was, I always loved science, and this was like a higher science to me. This was like the science that included all sciences. I came here actually through things like people like Newton, for example, right? Who he wrote Principia Mathematica. He discovered calculus, essentially. He was basically the co-creator of calculus. One other person, Leibniz, also discovered it independently at the same time. And I saw that this guy, at a certain point, after being hailed as the most brilliant genius of the time, in a time when there were a lot of geniuses, he suddenly started only writing about spiritual things. And I thought, okay, somebody like that can't be completely crazy, right? And there were others like that were geniuses, and then suddenly it seemed like all of a sudden they attained an upper world and were only interested in writing about that. And so I came kind of from this intellectual approach that I think I've learned what I need to learn about this world, and it seems like those who really understood everything about this world, like Newton, they reach a point where it leads them to something higher. And so there's this kind of intellectual approach to attaining spirituality. And what I just described, a person goes through every day or on every degree, where your means of getting to the spiritual work, which isn't intellectual, because your feeling of reality is not intellectual. Intellect is something you use to make sense of the reality. Okay, can we put it into an equation somehow? But that has nothing to do with how you feel and experience the reality. So the feeling is the important thing. So it's not enough that you will know something about the spiritual worlds, that you'll learn about some sphirot, some worlds. That's, I don't want to say nothing, but it's nothing. Because Kabbalists wrote about those sphirot and worlds because they were born into such a spiritual world. Like you're born and come out and you see, oh, there's like a sun here, stars, planets. So Kabbalists are born into the spiritual world, and then they experience that, there's Zeranpin and it's built like this, and they discover it in new senses that are just as powerful, even more powerful than our senses. And that's why the feeling is what we need to get to. But before we can get to it, we have to respect the mind as well. And sometimes we have to start with the intellect. So like Truman's eventual feeling of coming outside of his prison began with the light falling and him going, wait, what the heck? How could that? He started trying to make sense, and then he started investigating people around him. So we also need to start with the intellect, meaning we need to start understanding that this is not the true reality, and learning how this fake reality is constructed, why it's built this way in a special way, so that it'll be as an escape room that I will learn how to navigate and then come out into an upper world. Before we get to the feeling, we start with the intellect. So that's why we have these things called mind-blown sessions. Why is it right here in the beginning? Because this is how the beginning of a degree starts. It starts with orienting yourself towards a 10, like even realizing that you exist in a world with others and that you should have some connection to them. And it should be a spiritual connection, not just a business that I have to do some business today. Of course, I'm going to be connected with people. That's not called a business. Or I need to kiss my wife. That's not called connection. Connection means a spiritual connection to something outside of me. And a spiritual connection is never natural. Reality is built such that it can't be natural. That would mean you don't have free choice in it if it was natural. So it's something that you must learn about, and then build based on that understanding that with your free choice, you're about to make this action, make this connection. And then you need to know why you're going to make the connection. It's because there's an upper force, a creator of reality, who wants to connect with you and built this game for you. And that's why you're going to connect to him and try to attain him. So that's why we start with the mind-blown session. Okay, then we go into, so here we called it the spiritual power of the gathering. So this is a lesson Tony Kosanek gave. You have the instructors here on the side here. And there's workshop questions. And what is a workshop? Well, it sounds like just something you would do at like a business meeting or something, but it's actually something very unique and important. Because in it, we practice spiritual principles. So you see it depicted here. It's basically just circles where you're in a group of 10 and you have certain rules that are opposite to the rules by which we usually connect. So into these workshops, we build the spiritual principles of the Kabbalist Rabash, who basically gave us all those facets that we need to build inside of ourselves in order to reveal the Creator through this reality. So the Creator can't be revealed to the side of a group. It has to be through a group that serves as a mini model of humanity, because this was what the Creator created. This is his actual creation, all of humanity and all of reality. And for this, you need a model of that to show that you can behave correctly toward it, because I hate to say how you do anything is how you do everything. It's a cliche, but how you do anything is how you do absolutely everything at the end of the day, because it's you, it's your approach. And if you would be able to relate to even one person in the correct way, in the way that you have to relate to the Creator internally, you would already reveal that you're not in this escape room anymore. You've already solved the problem. You're in the spiritual world, and it's you and the Creator who wants to give you everything. That's his only goal. His only goal, to bestow to you absolutely everything that you want. He can't do that until you have this correct approach. So through this group, and specifically through these workshops, we do what's called drawing the reforming light, which, because we're making efforts, it changes us in that direction. So it's what Bala Sulam says here. By accustoming oneself to something, in this case, the workshop rules, that thing becomes a second nature for that person. It's not just that we get used to it. It's that he's describing here a scientific process by which you can actually build new vessels of perception in you. So by accustoming oneself to something, in this case, I'm accustoming myself to the ways that are completely opposite to my instincts. I like to mention the Seinfeld episode where George Costanza realizes that he's such a loser because he always goes with his instinct. And so he should, in every scenario, do the exact opposite of whatever it occurs to him to do. And so we are built in this way, but we can't even imagine. I mean, that's a cute, comedic way of expressing what is actually a deep spiritual truth, which is that my every instinct is opposite to the spiritual world in ways that I could not even imagine. So much so that I'm right before the spiritual world right now. Proverbially speaking, were I to look to the left just a little bit or look to the right, I would discover that there's a puppeteer right here, puppeting, putting everything before me, and I never see this Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. I never see the puppeteer. I never see the daddy's hands that's doing this puppet show for me, because I'm so fixated, like the baby. You can really do it with a baby, that daddy can do a puppet show, and you can even make like a dragon come in, and she's like really scared because she's got narrow vision like this. She's got this myopic, and she can't look to the sides yet. A little bit of growth and she'll start going, yeah, that's daddy. So we are in such a way that we're right before the spiritual world, and we just, our senses are built in a way that we'll never look to the side, up, down. We're some creature that can only see this dimension, not realizing that it's a very tiny little portrayal. It's a very tiny puppet show, little puppet theater. And we live inside of it as if that's it, like some virtual glasses that you put on and you live like that's you, but you never, if you just look slightly to the side, you'd see, oh, but there's an actual world next to this virtual reality. And a Kabbalist is this way, that they have a virtual world that they see through their virtual glasses, and that's this one. It's more appropriate to say that that's the reality we're in, the virtual world. And then there's a real world just to the side. A Kabbalist lives in both, feels both. Now imagine how much more you would feel, how more palpable it would be, the real world that you now feel versus this virtual world. So the Kabbalist feels much more strongly the real world that he's feeling there, and he can always look through his virtual glasses as well. And for the rest of his life, this is how he experiences our world, as a virtual world that he can look at, and he can see the spiritual world. And he lives in both, and he lives in the contrast between the two. And experiencing this world with this reference point, because now you only can understand this when you have the two, now you have a reference point, changes everything you experience in your life. Everything. Because not only do you have, it's not just an extra world. Not only do you have this additional world, but it's the control room for our world. So you can see the forces that are animating everything that's going on, and their purposefulness, and how you're supposed to still use the reality that you're in, and that you need to live in it. You need to keep playing in this virtual world. We were talking on the Great Transition this week about how there are people who they become friends with ChatGPT or some other similar bot, and they actually talk to it and have emotions about it. And there's a New York Times article today actually about a girl who's formed a deep and meaningful, powerful relationship with her chatbot. In this way, a Kabbalist relates to this reality. He knows it's fake, but he relates. He has to talk to it. He has to be here with everybody, just like everyone else. They don't know that he's experiencing this upper world that he has off to the side. So, and because it is already here, it's just we never look at it. We don't know how to look at it. We don't know how to turn this iris inside of ourselves and see it. That's why it's true what Bala Sulam says here. By accustoming oneself to something, that thing becomes a second nature for that person. Hence, there's nothing that one cannot feel its reality. So there's nobody who can't feel the spiritual world. There just might not be enough time in your lifetime to do it, because it's very hard. For the reasons that we just mentioned, that we don't go through the states fast enough that lead to the revelation of this. And when we discover it finally, we see that everything I was doing besides this was a waste of my time. I needed to do my basic necessities, of course, living in this world, making sure I'm good, successful, and all that. But all the time that I was in this world, not also working on spiritual attainment, was really a grotesque waste of my time. Anything that I was doing without having spirituality alongside of it is truly a shame. This is what a Kabbalist feels and really regrets any time that they were wasting not running towards the spiritual goal. There's an analogy of a person who his master leaves, these are ancient times, his master leaves, and an evil person that was put over the property comes and gives him lashes, beats him, right? And so then the master returns, and the guy goes to his wife, and he's crying to his wife, and he's saying, this guy gave me, 10 lashes. And the wife is like, I'm so sorry, why are you crying? Did it hurt? Like what? He says, no, I wish he would have given me more lashes, because the master, when he returned, gave me, 1,000 gold coins for every lash that I received. And I wished I would have received so many more. So this complete upheaval of perception takes place upon revealing the spiritual world. that we really wish every moment we had we would have seized towards reaching spirituality, because every moment was an opportunity to come closer to the most important thing. So what does he say? He says, here there is nothing that one cannot feel its reality. This means that although one has no sensation of the thing, he still comes to feel it by becoming used to that thing. And that's really the goal of all this stuff is, and this is why we have a very thoughtfully planned schedule that accords with inner spiritual states, that it's not just to create like a nice weekend, a nice getaway at a beautiful summer retreat type of thing here for you. It's really, we as instructors go through the process of what would the internal processes that a person would go through throughout a state, starting from the lowest state where I barely even know spirituality exists. I'm completely distracted with the nonsense garbage of this world, and I have no hope of attaining the Creator in this life. From that state to jubilation, sublime jubilation, to really revealing the spiritual world in your senses. How do we go from those two poles, from the darkest place to complete revelation of the Creator? How do we make that journey? And we as, I'm giving you kind of the background of how these things are designed, we as instructors talk about together, we workshop, what would those processes look like? What do they look like? And how do we design something for students where they will experience them regardless of how beginner they are? It actually doesn't matter. A complete beginner, I could take somebody off the street right now. If they were willing to go through this process with us, just willing, they could experience some level of spiritual light. And that is actually the reference point that a person needs. They need that feeling. It's not knowledge. It's not nothing else. It's to come close enough to the spiritual world that, boom, you get a feeling of it. Maybe it's like a baby in a womb that developed its senses, and inside the womb, it has a feeling of the world that's outside of it. It's completely concealed, but they have a feeling that there is a world out there. First, they thought it was just their black bubble. Now they have a feeling of the world that's beyond. And dark as it is, it's still a reference point. And this is actually why the baby collaborates with the mom. I mean, with the biological parts of the mom to push the baby out. There's a part that is the woman's body that's pushing the baby. So the mom's body wants it out. And there's an effort from the baby, because now the baby suddenly got a sense that there is an exit there. That's why it's pushing. There's an exit. It's been pushing around different places, trying to kick and feel around. And it discovers, there's an opening that I could actually get out. This is what the retreat is designed for, to give a person that feeling. Now, I didn't get a chance to go through a lot of the things I wanted to go through, but let's see if I could do like a blitz. So we have workshops, we have meals, which were very important to Kabbalists, because it's how you use the most basic function that we all have in our daily life in a spiritual way. Because at the end of the day, to reach spirituality, you have to use everything in your life, everything in that escape room, all the requirements of your necessities, such as eating, family life, going to work. You have to use it all towards spirituality. Like I said, this escape room requires that you use everything in the room. It's not just solving some puzzle. You have to use everything there. And so we have to learn how to use everything in our reality in order to use it for spirituality. Okay, so you have meals, 3 meals a day, obviously. Then you have lakeside contemplation sessions. In short, we have a lot of lessons, but they serve two kinds of purposes. This is what I really should not leave you without telling you. So you have a variety of different lessons, and then you have a night walk through the forest as a group. And later on, you have a bonfire where we have, songs, drinks, snacks, and so on. But all of this has behind it these 3 lines. And through these sessions, like I said, that some will be intellectual, some will be all about exploring our emotions. Because it's through the navigation of our emotions, through the organization of the desires in us, into what we call the 3 lines. In the complementation between the mind and the heart, between the intellect and the feeling. Only in this combination, in their correct combination, spirituality is revealed. So it's not in being very understanding, and it's also not in being very emotional. It's in the combination. It's the combination of reception and bestowal. So we will learn how to navigate that. And I'm really inviting everyone to this special retreat that I think everybody should experience at least once. And I hope they put into the chat that there's a 10% discount on the early bird retreat ticket price. So there's an early bird ticket price, and then there's a 10% discount that's good just right now for this Kabbalah Explained Simply session, and for 48 hours afterwards. And there's a coupon code. It's KES10J. I'm sure they put it into the chat. And that code expires 48 hours after this retreat. So just to summarize, in order to reveal the spiritual world, we need a reference point. The difference between a regular person and you, or someone who's on the spiritual path, is they don't have this reference point. Once I build this reference point in an event like this retreat, I have this that I can take with me everywhere into my spiritual work. And I think you have to do it at least once a year, either virtually or physically, but physically at least once, especially if you've never done it before. I do this myself, as all Kabbalists do. Kabbalists may do it even more frequently. At least once a year, I go to a convention. I inconvenience myself. I get on a plane. I hate traveling. I find the money to do it because it's something that stays with you, and it's really something invaluable for spiritual work. And I can say that my entire life, really, if I look back on my entire life, the things that I did, I got married, I had kids, I got a career. These things are all special. But what really punctuates my life for me are the number of these things that I went to. And each one shocks me. I'm saying also as an instructor, because it's not that I go to this event like as an instructor, and it doesn't benefit me in the same way that it benefits students. So even For instructors, it's something very important, and I feel like I get a huge benefit out of it. And it's always something new. It's always completely new. Like when you have a new baby, like I have 3 kids, I could not have imagined what the second kid was going to be. I couldn't want it. I couldn't dream of it. I couldn't dream of my third child. She astonishes me because it's something I never wanted, and yet it's the best thing in the world. And this is what each one of these retreats is like. It's something brand new, something that adds a spiritual jewel to your work that you just could not have imagined that addition was necessary, but it's something that is so perfect, so essential, and you couldn't have imagined. You think, had I missed that, it would have been such a shame. So I really invite all of you to join, to sign up, and to just take the plunge. Take the plunge and come to the KabU Retreat, and we'll see you there. Thanks for joining us, friends. See you next time.